Hi, my name's Amber Dread, and I'm going to be reading a fanfic by Akashne. It's called Yule Ball. The summary is, Yule Ball is coming and Hux has had enough of Ben Solo's silliness. What could go wrong when a Slytherin wants to teach a Gryffindor about honour? We all know how it ends. Okay, so I am reading this as a birthday present for her because she is wonderful. And you can find this story on AA3, and it's a very lovely story. So if you don't stick with my terrible narration, go read it anyway. Okay, so here we go. Armitage Hux decided he had had enough of Ben's bullshit. He had watched Solo's constant rivalry and bickering with Ray for long enough. To be honest, he barely remembered a time before the hostility with his Gryffindor friend's supposed nemesis. It was a little funny in the beginning because the girl, a 6-year Hufflepuff, wasn't as stereotypically sweet and cuddly as most of her house. She could be as snarky as Hux himself and knew how to fight dirty if she wanted to. Also, she was able to perfectly call young Solo on his bullshit, impressing Armitage more than once. Today, Hux had to impatiently wait for Ben to finish having his arse handed to him perfectly, again. The guy had to be masochistic or madly in love. No sane person would do this over and over again without some kind of reason. He tapped his foot restlessly, waiting for Ray to land a finishing blow, roll his eyes, and head towards the Great Hall for lunch. They were already late enough due to Solo's recklessness. Phasma was standing beside him, ignoring the world in favour of reading her newest science fiction book. When Solo finally joined them, every inch of his face, including his ears, was a bright lobster red. Hux sighed in exasperation and set off towards the hall. Usually he would refrain from commenting, not wanting to kick a man while he was down, but they were already 7th years and this has gone on for too long. Solo, how many times have I told you, ask her out, get a room or something, but please, for the love of God, just stop this, he said tiredly. Phasma hummed in agreement. Impossibly, Ben's face and ears flushed even more. I told you, it's not like that. She's my arch enemy. It took all Hux's strong will not to facepalm right then and there. Phasma only snorted. First, we aren't in one of Faz's silly novels where people have arch enemies, he declared, swiftly avoiding a punch from the girl. And second, it's our last year here. The Yule Ball is coming up, so just ask her to go with you. It might be your last chance to ever go on an actual date with her. I told you, it's not like that, Solo mumbled. Both Slytherins rolled their eyes. Yeah, right, Armitage snarked, sitting down by the Slytherin table and inspecting today's menu. Remind me, why are we even friends? Because when your father told you to become friends with the Skywalker heir, he never expected it to become real, Ben answered, regaining his typical charm and trademark Solo grin. Even Hux couldn't stop himself from responding with a small smirk. Ah, that's true, he lamented with mock suffering in his voice. After finishing his appetizers, Hux decided he couldn't let Ben off the hook that easily. But seriously, Solo, either leave the girl alone or ask her out, because at this point you're the laughingstock of half the school. And besides, he continued, pointing at the Gryffindor with a fork, what's the worst that could happen? She could say no, Solo answered grumpily. Well, you're already a joke when it comes to her, so no one will care. And the chance of her refusing is pretty low. She usually goes with her best friend, what's-his-name, and Dameron. And since Dameron and the other guy finally came out of the closet this summer and started dating officially, they're going to go together, which means she doesn't have a date. He shrugged. Ben looked down at his plate, avoiding Hux's eyes. She'd never agree. If she doesn't, she doesn't. What's the big deal? It's easy for you to say. You've never been rejected in your life. Hux snorted. Yeah, right. Do you really want me to show you how to do it, you big baby? Surprised, Solo finally looked up at him. What? Do you want me to show you how to take her rejection with grace? Hux explained. Yeah, right. As if you'd ever do anything to expose yourself to humiliation like that, Ben said disbelievingly. Hux sighed. Usually, you'd be right. But if I have to teach a Gryffindor some courage, I'm willing to consider it. I'll believe it when I see it. Okay, watch me, Armitage said, standing up and abandoning his half-eaten meal. In a few quick steps, he reached Ray, who was gathering her things and chatting with Rose, another Hufflepuff from her clique of friends. Ray, he said gently. She looked up at him, surprised, stopping in mid-sentence. Hello? She responded cautiously. Will you do me the honour of going to the Yule Ball? He asked, a little more stiffly than he'd planned. It took a few seconds for her to understand his question. She blinked a few times, glanced at Rose, then swallowed. And then she said the last thing he was expecting. Sure. This time, he needed a few seconds to process things. Oh, okay, so see you later then? He responded lamely, and swiftly turned back and almost ran back to his friends. Numbly, he sat down at his place, looking at his plate with unseeing eyes. And? Solo asked. You don't look so good, Phasma noticed. Still in shock, he looked at them. She said yes, he whispered. Bollocks, he was in serious trouble. What Ray wanted to do was move, to pace from one wall of Finn's bedroom to another. What Ray had to do was stand still while Finn and Rose worked on adjustments of her dress while Poe lay unhelpfully on his boyfriend's bed, having fun at her expense. The dress was given to her by Rose's sister, Paige, who graduated from Hogwarts 2 years ago and had a similar build as Ray, who would never be able to afford a ball dress on her own. But the oldest Tycho always treated her like her own sister, and borrowing each other's clothes was something sisters apparently did. Still, it needed some work, and great friends that they were, Finn and Rose offered their help. Poe just tagged along for his own amusement. But Ray couldn't stand still. The ball was following Friday, and she still didn't know what to make of the situation. Out of the trio, she knew Armitage Hux the least. Ben had been her frenemy since her first year at Hogwarts, and she enjoyed arguing with him. He challenged her and never gave up, and she liked that a lot. He never assumed her to be anything less than herself, and he didn't underestimate her. She knew Phasma too. She was the first Slytherin to join her and Finn's Muggle lit, quickly falling down the sci-fi rabbit hole. She even campaigned to the headmaster to make a Muggle literature section in the library when they ran out of books for her to borrow. The section was now growing at a steady rate, with more and more students interested in non-magical books. But Hux was a mystery to her. He always stood away from her and Ben's verbal duels, quietly observing and listening, sometimes rewarding her with a nod after a particularly impressive dig at Solo. He had only approached her once, during her second year when she had had her only real fight with Ben. She had ended with a really low blow about his family, and Solo ran away without a word. Hux came to her with a slight grimace on his face and an odd protectiveness in his eyes. You crossed a line today. Don't do it ever again, he declared calmly. And then he followed his friend. There was no threat in his voice or posture, and yet she knew he wouldn't hesitate to crush her if she ever hurt his friend again. Not that she wanted to, anyway. Fighting with Solo was fun, but neither of them really wanted to hurt each other. She later found him in the library and apologised, and they talked for several hours. It was a strained friendship, and she knew at least half of the castle thought it was their way of flirting with one another, but truth be told, neither of them was romantically interested in the other. That's why she was so surprised when Armitage asked her to go with him to the Yule Ball. She was just talking with Rose about going as each other's dates and just having fun since Finn and Poe were going together when Hux approached them. Of course, just like his two friends, he was ridiculously handsome, with his bright coppery hair, marble skin, sharp cheekbones and icy blue eyes. His family was rich and powerful, even if he himself was sort of an outcast, being the result of his father's affair with a Muggle woman. He had never shown any kind of interest in her before, and there was no reason for him to be interested in her now. And yet she was going with him to the Yule Ball. Will you please stop squirming, Ray? She heard irritation in Rose's voice. The less you move, the sooner we'll be able to finish, and the sooner you'll be free. Sorry, Rose, she apologised in a tense voice. I just don't understand. Rose let out a pained sigh. Ray, we've been over this 1,000 times already. I know, but no buts. Don't overthink it. A nice-looking boy asked you to go with him to the ball. You agreed, and now you're going to go and have fun. And as a wonderful coincidence, the dress already complements the Slytherin house colours. Plus, it brings out the green in your eyes. You'll look amazing. Ray looked at Poe pleadingly. Hey, don't look at me. I don't know the guy, he protested. But he's in your year. You must have some classes together. Poe shrugged. Yeah, and so what? Like you know everyone in your year. Besides, he either sits with Ben or Phasma or both, and he isn't very friendly. Like, at all. And he's so stiff and proper. I don't know how he can sit with this stick up his arse. Ray groaned. Poe, you aren't helping. I wasn't trying to, he snorted. Ray, Finn said calmly. Rose is right, and you know it. You said it yourself, that probably isn't part of some kind of complicated plot against you, because this Hux guy isn't the kind of person. So just go with him, have fun, and let's see what comes out of it, okay? Now, change back into your clothes. I think we're done with pinning, and I'd rather not use the magical needle while you're still in the dress. Ray let out a frustrated sigh and nodded with resignation.